Have you ever felt that D&D's combat is too all or nothing, too hit or miss? G'day, I'm Mick, and this week, as you already know from the title, we're going to be changing the rules a little. In order to get the most out of this video, rather than just handing you a homebrew, I thought I would walk you through my own methodology for how I came up with my solution to a perceived problem with D&D's core rules. That way, even if you don't like the end product, you can take something away from the steps involved. If you'd rather skip to the finished homebrew and avoid all the dry numbers, there's a link in the pinned comment. So a common complaint about D&D from newcomers and veterans alike is how AC works. The rules as written give us a game where the heavier the armor you wear, the harder it is for someone to hit you, which goes against common sense for a lot of people. Logically, someone wearing leather armor should be harder to hit than someone wearing plate, it's just that the plate should reduce the damage they take when they are hit. Now, there's plenty of arguments for keeping the rules as written, simplicity being the biggest one. For plenty of people it's a non-issue, or at most a semantic one, not to mention half of you have probably never had it cross your mind. And then there is the balance argument. The game has been developed so that heavier armor increases AC. It mightn't make sense logically, but mechanically it's been tested and proven balanced. But if you do find yourself in a position where you don't like how AC works, you have options. You can steal a system from another game, download and plug in someone else's homebrew, or follow this video and apply your own criteria and homebrew your own variant system, which is very easy to do with 5th edition, so let's get into it. Now, the most important thing with any homebrew is knowing what it is you're trying to achieve. That sounds obvious and unworthy of mention, but if you don't write down clear criteria for exactly what you're trying to come up with, it's very easy for a homebrew to get away from you, to snowball and become this huge lumbering beast of spaghetti mechanics and feature creep. So the criteria I wanted to fill with my system are as follows. Heavier armor should absorb more damage than lighter armor. Lighter armor must be more difficult to hit than heavier armor. There should be some incentive to wear lighter armor. Currently, the only reason not to wear the heaviest armor at all times is disadvantage on stealth. But if your game is combat heavy and you're proficient in heavier armor, you should be wearing heavy armor, there's no question. And finally, it must easily integrate into the existing rule set. If the game gets slowed down by excessive calculations for each and every hit, then we haven't really improved the armor class system, have we? So first, let's look at how AC works in 5th edition with some examples. There are a lot of numbers, so I'll try and speed through it so it's not too dry, but if you're confident enough to skip this section, that's the timestamp you're looking for. Zevron is a fighter proficient in all armor. He has a 16 in dexterity, giving him a dex modifier of +3. If Zevron has to go unarmored, his AC becomes 10 plus his dex modifier, 13. This means that an attack roll 13 or above is a clean hit, full damage is inflicted, whereas a 12 or below is a clean miss, no damage is inflicted. If Zevron decides to wear some light armor, we'll say leather, his AC goes up to 11 plus his dex modifier, so 14. The rules for damage don't change. A 14 or above is a clean hit, 13 or below a clean miss. Now let's move up to medium armor, a chain shirt he looted from a local bandit. In this case, Zevron's AC becomes 13 plus his dex modifier, however he can't receive more than a +2 from that dex bonus because of the extra weight and limited maneuverability, so 13 plus 2 dex becomes 15 AC. 15 or above is a clean hit, 14 or below a clean miss. And lastly, heavy armor. Zevron was rewarded with a barrel of gold for clearing out those bandits and splurged on some plate. Plate armor has an AC of 18, but there's no dex contribution, not even if the wearer has a negative. 18 plus is a clean hit, full damage, 17 and below a clean miss, no damage. So we could rephrase the written rules as wearing no armor or light armor allows you to utilize all your dexterity. Medium armor you can utilize a little, up to 2 points, and heavy armor gets no benefit nor penalty from your dex. Notice in all these circumstances, you're either hit or you aren't. Perhaps we can find some middle ground. Remember though, we want to keep it easy to understand and we don't want to invalidate what's written in the player's handbook. So let's keep these values, keep the mechanics, and build off of that. So let's start with unarmored. 10 plus dex with Zev, that's 13. 13 or higher is a clean hit, 12 or lower is a clean miss. He's unarmored. Nothing is absorbing the impact or absorbing damage, so that's appropriate. There's no need to change it. So I call 13 his clean AC, or EC for evade class. He will dodge anything less than that, exactly as in the standard rules, no damage taken. Moving on to light armor, it still allows the full benefit of your dexterity, just as if you're unarmored. So let's calculate clean AC the same way, 10 plus dex, 13. Anything lower than 13 is a clean miss. But where does the benefit of the armor come in? If it's leather, the book says 11 plus dexterity, so 14. And that's what I call the dirty AC, exactly the same calculation as normal, stock and standard AC. What this means is that 14 or above is a clean hit, full damage, 12 or below a clean miss, no damage, whereas 13 is an armor mediated hit, or dirty hit as my table calls it. A dirty hit will still deal damage, however it's subject to certain resistances conferred by the armor type, and I'll cover that shortly. For now, let's keep moving through the armor types. Medium armor, the chain shirt, your dexterity is now limited to 2, so your clean AC is only 10 plus 2 this time. Your dirty AC sticks to the calculation as written in the player's handbook, so for a chain shirt that's 13 plus 2 dex, 15 AC. Heavy armor, the way I like to use it, can have a negative dex contribution, but still can't go above 0. So Zev's clean AC in plate is 10 plus 0 and his dirty AC is 18. Great, so in essence, every piece of armor now has 2 defensive stats. Clean AC, which is calculated the same way as unarmored AC in the player's handbook, 10 plus your dex modifier, however it is beholden to the dexterity limit of the armor type you're wearing. And dirty AC, reliant on your specific armor, which is still calculated as written in the player's handbook. So now we have a clean AC and a dirty AC. We know if an attack roll is less than the clean AC, it's a clean miss. We know if the attack roll equals or exceeds the dirty AC, it's a clean hit. So what's the mid-range? What's a dirty hit? That would depend on the type of armor. Light armor, it's good enough for close combat with swords and maces, but arrows don't pay it much mind, so a dirty hit on light armor has resistance to slashing and bludgeoning damage. Medium armor is a little better, it can shrug off the odd projectile here and there, so a dirty hit on medium armor has resistance to slashing, bludgeoning, and piercing. Heavier armor is tougher again, the sheer weight and resilience makes it perfect for withstanding force-based magical assaults. So a dirty hit on heavy armor has resistance to slashing, bludgeoning, piercing, and force damage, as well as immunity to magic missile. A side note is I allow magical weapons to ignore dirty hit resistances and treat them as clean hits, unless the armor itself is also magical, in which case ignore this rule. Now the number crunchers amongst you will look at all this and say, hold on, why even bother with heavier armor then? I'm still taking damage, I may as well wear light armor and max out my dex, which would look like this. And yes, exactly, if your character is incredibly dexterous, that should be the more appealing option, as opposed to raw where plate is still a better option for a max dex character. Players should be able to weigh up their options and make a personalized character decision, not just read the numbers and say I have to pick that because it's clearly the most optimized choice. Of course, if your character is more of the clumsy sort, any bit of armoring is an improvement, as dodging isn't something they're likely to achieve. But how does this actually work out in combat? Armor wearers are clearly taking more damage than they would have before this homebrew. How does it work at higher levels? The way it looks on these tables, the plate wearer is taking a lot of dirty hits that would have otherwise been misses. Well, this table accurately represents a hit table if the party's opponent has no attack modifier, meaning they can roll between a 1 and a 20 to hit. But what if it's, let's say, a hill giant, combat rating 5, so nothing too crazy, they have an attack modifier plus 8. So in that case, the table potential rolls would look like this. And if we take a glimpse at the statistics on that, assuming the giants are dealing bludgeoning damage, which is halved universally on dirty hits against all armor types, for Zevron it's much of a muchness. Some armor is good, but plate stands a little better. For our champ, however, light armor takes the cake, where she's able to put her dexterity to use unimpaired. And for poor Norm, well, the thicker the gear he straps to himself, the safer he'll be. Comparing this to the raw hit rate for the standard AC rules, the damage gap has closed significantly, purely at the cost of the heavier armor. And I'm okay with that. A lot of players, even DMs, might freak out at how much more damage it is being dealt to the party as a whole. The game wasn't balanced with this in mind. In that fight alone, if Norm had been wearing plate, he was taking 45% more damage than if I hadn't implemented this system. But those aren't the numbers I think we should be focusing on. In reality, what we've done is make a more balanced armor system. No longer is there an obvious progression from light to heavy, no clear attitude of I must get plate to be my most viable self. You can be max level, unarmored, and perfectly viable. You, the DM, can lovingly make any cool piece of armor you want, and the players won't have that conflict of I like it, but my half plate is best in slot for me. This gives us so much more free reign to get crazy and inventive with armor effects on the armor we want to make and include, rather than the armor that the players need and are holding out for. I should, as an aside, quickly mention for other sources of AC, such as mage armor and bark skin, clean AC works the same as I've described for light armor, 10 plus dex with no limit on the dex contribution. These are supernatural effects, so I don't see them crippling your flexibility. And the values and calculations stated by each of these abilities set their dirty AC. Oh, and I haven't forgotten shields. Shields I've reworked to be more interactive. Rather than giving you a base increase in your AC, where you just equip the shield for stats and forget all about it, if a character has a shield equipped and they suffer a dirty hit, they can use their reaction to block that hit entirely, turning it into a clean miss and suffering no damage. Mechanically, this is using the reaction to make your clean AC equal your dirty AC for that one attack. This same reaction could alternatively be triggered if they suffered a clean hit, where the extra +2 from the shield would be enough to make it a dirty hit instead. So if if your dirty AC is 16, the attacker rolls at 17, you can use this reaction to bump your dirty AC up to 18 for that one attack. In my mind, this represents overextending or barely reacting in time to block what might have been a finishing blow. It's not graceful and you still take damage, but that shield definitely saved you some hurt. With this mechanic, players are rewarded for clever shield use, and this would be critical for Norm, as against the Hill Giant, his hit table would go from this to this when he popped that reaction. Granted, he can only do it once because he has terrible dex, but that's a big difference nonetheless. So I think we've got it all sorted, but let's bring up my criteria again to make sure I covered everything. Heavier armor should absorb more damage than lighter armor. Indeed it does. Both more attack rolls and more damage types are absorbed by the heavier armors. Lighter armor should be more difficult to hit than heavy armor. Yes, their EC is higher, so the clean misses are more common on lightly or unarmored characters. Incentivize light armor. I definitely think we've managed that. The damage taken by all armor types averages out far closer than it does with raw. However, heavier armor with properly utilized shield reactions will be a standout in short fights. And integration with raw. In that aspect, I'm very happy with what we've come up with. We're still utilizing all the AC values in the player's handbook, so players will easily be able to reference and use this system with minimal relearning. So now we've got it all figured out, let's run through the clean and dirty armor system start to finish to make sure we've understood everything. And welcome back those who skipped to the end. Every armored character now has two defensive values, AC, which we know, and EC, or what my table calls dirty and clean ACs. AC is calculated exactly as written in the player's handbook for that armor type, with the twist that heavy armor no longer ignores negative dexterity modifiers. EC is always calculated as 10 plus their dex modifier, but it will share the dex limitation conferred from that armor type. So medium armor has a max EC of 12, heavy armor has a max EC of 10. If the EC is higher than an attack roll, it's a clean miss. The attack misses and no damage is taken. If the EC isn't higher than the attack, but the AC is higher, the attack is classified as an armor mediated hit or a dirty hit. And depending on the type of armor, that attack damage may be halved. For light armor, a dirty hit has resistance to slashing and bludgeoning damage. For medium armor, a dirty hit has resistance to slashing, bludgeoning, and piercing. For heavy armor, dirty hit is resistance to slashing, bludgeoning, piercing, and force damage, as well as immunity to magic missile. If neither EC nor AC are higher than the attack, it's a clean hit, damage is dealt as normal. Supernatural armor effects like mage armor and bark skin are treated as light armor. They have no limit on the dexterity contribution to their EC, and their AC remains as written. Shields no longer give passive AC benefits, instead they can be used as a reaction when the character is hit to turn a dirty hit into a clean miss, or to increase the character's AC by the armor of their shield, which defaults for 2 for most shields. This reaction can be used a number of times equal to the character's dexterity modifier per shot or long rest minimum of 1. And finally, magical weapons treat dirty hits as clean hits, unless the armor or shield providing the AC is also magical. And that's it. Like it or hate it, what do you think? Or more importantly, what do you think of the process? Because this was my process, and it may seem like everything was already figured out and I was just walking you through it, but that's really how easy it is when you establish your goals, think through the existing mechanics aloud, and question them one item at a time while applying a layer of your own logic. You can run the numbers if you want, but the notion of balance, well, that could be a whole other video. The notion of balance is subjective. My solution works great for me, but I'm sure other tables would hate it, and that's fine because you homebrew for you. It's your problem, your logic, and your solution. It only needs to work for you. Let me know if I should do more of these, and if so, if there's something in particular you'd want to see. Drop me a bell, let me know, and as always, if you like what I do here, if you're liking the channel, share it around, consider subscribing. If you have requests for videos, drop them below. I'm actually editing a request right now as you're watching this. Thanks again for stopping by, and until next time, I'll see you guys down under in the comments.